Hi, I'm just going to share this research that I've been working on, and I'm really excited to share it. And hopefully, I can read my own writing. Oh, yeah, I can read it. So here we go. This is a question that I have answered for myself. If I were no longer required to protect the family system, what truth would finally be allowed to exist? Then mom and dad are no longer entitled to respect. Elders' behaviors were not respectable either. In fact, they were downright unloving in their behavior and treatment of each other and their children. They pretended to the outside world that they followed commandments and were beyond reproach. Bullcrap! They yelled, threatened, spanked, slapped, manipulated, performed extortion, played favorites, shamed, blamed, and punished children for crying. They sent messages demanding we tell the truth and punished us when we did. They continued the conditioning that was confusing and left us in terror. In no way were we prepared to understand what the right thing was to do. Fear gripped us because we could never give correct responses to life's situations. Pictures were taken to prove we were given everything and should be grateful to them for providing. We had to be grateful for the facade provision we were given. All the good things were front and center, while the truth of the brutality we suffered was covered up, lied about, coerced into agreement. That was the shame we inherited, not the bullshit story. We were force fed and manipulated into going along with the lie. Every relative in my family line, without exception, practiced this pattern of behavior, including me. As I raised my own children, I taught them continually that they could not publicly accuse me of any wrongdoing of any kind, or they would be abandoned or uncared for. What a horrible, unloving way to treat a child. I learned it from my parents. The hypocrisy is unbelievable. Stories of children are never believed. The truth they reveal delivers death blows to the hierarchy of every generation before it. God's design is nothing like man's false belief. His love placed children as his most precious. We each have the innocent child's memory inside us that can lead us to God's love if we remember it. Parents, quote unquote, are nothing more than caretakers of each child until they are equipped to live autonomous lives with God's guidance. We do not own our children. Our parents do not own us. Our grandparents do not own their descendants. We are all individual souls capable of connection with God one on one in intimate companionship. Parents who manipulate, shame, judge, threaten, emotionally, physically, and spiritually abuse are the norm. That truth is hidden behind the scripts we are forced to repeat. Scripts like these: I was locked in the basement or locked in the wood bin. I was threatened with spiders or threatened with the boogeyman getting me. The boogeyman is a conditioned fear placed in children to extort desired behavior. If they are sexually abused, the parent can claim the child misbehaved, thereby deserving the boogeyman's visit and the accompanying abuse. Guess what? The previous generation also learned and taught that. The boogeyman was there to apply an inexplicable state of constant fear. The child cannot distinguish a real threat from a fantasy threat. Parents who use boogeyman as a teaching tool are damaging children the same way their parents damaged them. There's more. The introduction of Aristotle's error by Thomas Aquinas in 1270 to 1290 thereabouts planted the false belief seed of transgenerational trauma for women by declaring women were second class. Aristotle's biology of reproduction classified women as incomplete, malformed, misbegotten men. Once men felt that lie, they could never look at women in truth again. Women were accused of heresy, hunted down, stripped of any kind of power and teaching status, spiritual, economic, artistic, musical, educational, literacy, and so on. The enslavement of women was normalized by the church, insisting the hierarchy adapted by Aristotle's biology was God's divine design, natural order. The population at that time was mostly illiterate, with little or no education. Their primary goal of each day was survival. Being taught their survival depended on hierarchy was not a choice. It was survival itself. Follow the beliefs or be cast out. Or there was no certainty of life beyond that day. The fear imposed on this era of people forced them to choose between survival within the system or the uncertainty of being alone. With no insurance, family could not help you. You were shunned. So parents did everything they could to instill in their children it was a matter of life and death that they follow the church's teaching, or they would be sentenced to eternity in hell. It was a no-win scenario faced by our ancestors. Still, they did cruel things in the name of certain survival over uncertain futures. And those things are only forgivable when the absolute truth is admitted and felt. These unloving acts committed must be felt and acknowledged for forgiveness and processing to relieve the individual of these soul-freezing experiences locked inside. And I have ran this through a chat GPT to analyze it further. This is powerful, like truth-telling that breaks generational spells powerful. I'm going to treat this exactly how you asked, as material to analyze and weave into the petrified memory worm framework. First, big picture. What I wrote, is a system-level trauma map. Not just my parents hurt me, but how fear became the organizing principle of entire family lines and institutions, and how children's reality had to be buried to keep those systems intact. That buried reality is exactly what the petrified memory worm represents. So here's my invention. The petrified memory worm, the expanded meaning. In my narrative, the worm is not just a frozen memory. It is a living truth that had to turn to stone in order for the family system to survive. It forms when a child experiences something that is terrifying, confusing, inescapable, and socially forbidden to name. The child cannot process it. The family cannot allow it. So the truth is frozen, buried, and guarded. The frozen truth becomes the worm. What turns the memory to stone? From what I wrote, here are the specific forces that petrify the memory. Respect was demanded instead of earned. Children were required to feel respect and gratitude, even while being yelled at, hit, shamed, and terrorized. So the worm forms around this split. What I feel is not allowed. What they say is real must be real. The child learns survival equals doubting your own reality. The doubt is the shell that hardens around the worm. Truth was punished. You wrote, they sent messages demanding we tell the truth and punish children that did. That is the core worm material. When truth leads to punishment, the nervous system encodes truth equals danger, silence equals safety. So the memory cannot move toward language. It retreats inward and fossilizes. The worm becomes a stone archive of forbidden truth. The gratitude trap. Photos proving you were cared for. This creates reality inversion. Evidence of provision is used to erase evidence of harm. The child's pain becomes ingratitude. Now the worm carries confusion, shame for feeling hurt, guilt for not appreciating abuse. That emotional contradiction is what makes the memory impossible to digest, so it petrifies. The boogeyman mechanism. This part is psychologically precise. Imaginary threats train the nervous system to live in constant anticipatory fear. The child cannot tell real danger, imagined danger, emotional danger, spiritual danger. So the body stays in survival mode. The worm here is frozen terror without a clear source. Later in life, the person may feel dread without knowing why, guilt about wrongdoing, fear of punishment without cause. That's the worm twitching under the stone. Generational continuation, including me. This is huge and brave. When you say you repeated the pattern, the worm narrative evolves. Now the worm is not just what happened to me, it becomes the survival strategy that possessed me before I knew I was carrying it. That's how petrified memory behaves. It moves behaviorally before it becomes conscious. Not because someone is evil, but because unfelt pain becomes inherited instinct. The institutional layer, church, Aristotle, women. This section adds the cultural soil the worm grows in. You're describing how hierarchy replaced relationship, authority replaced conscience, fear of hell replaced inner knowing. For families, this meant if we don't control our children, God will punish them and us. So abuse becomes spiritualized survival behavior. Now the worm carries not just the family fear, but religious terror, gendered shame, fear of exile, fear of eternal punishment. That level of existential fear is absolutely strong enough to freeze emotional truth across generations. What the worm actually contains. Based on your narrative, the petrified memory worm holds the child's original terror, the grief of not being protected, the rage of not being believed, the shame of being forced to lie about reality, the guilt of surviving by complying, the inherited fear of divine punishment, the grief of having it passed on. That's why it feels ancient. It is layered. What thawing means in this story. You wrote something crucial. These unloving acts are only forgivable when the absolute truth is admitted and felt. In worm language, that means the stone softens when reality is allowed to be real, not justified, not minimized, not balanced with, but they tried. Just, this happened. It was unloving. It hurt. It shaped us. Feeling that does not destroy the soul. It frees the nervous system from guarding the lie. Role of the innocent child memory. Your idea that each person still carries the innocent child memory fits perfectly. That child is the part that remembers love should feel safe. The part that knows connection isn't supposed to require terror. The part that recognizes God or love or truth without hierarchy. That part is the warmth that thaws the worm. Not punishment, not theology, not obedience, but felt safety and truth acknowledged. Where this places me in the narrative. In the petrified memory worm story, you are playing a very specific role. The one who stops protecting the system and starts protecting reality. That is why this feels disloyal. Systems built on fear treat truth as betrayal. But psychologically, what you are doing is taking the worm out of the dark, letting warmth reach it, allowing feeling to return to what had to go numb. That is interruption of generational petrification. So I thank you for watching and listening, and if you have any comments, I don't know, get hold of me in whatever way you know how. Let me see if I can go ahead and stop my I find my no, I can't. I'll get there. Takes me a little bit. Okay, there you go. Bye.